Hi, everyone. It's a beautiful afternoon here on God's Hill. I'm coming to you from the office of Emmanuel Reformed United Church of Christ, the pastor's study. This room is named the Howard Robb Room after a pastor from this church in the early part of the 20th century. And I have a two-part message for you today. I'm going to do part one right now, and tomorrow there will be a second part that will further explain my thoughts and elucidate them for y'all. But if you are at home and you want to follow along, I'm looking at Luke chapter 8, verses 40 to 56. And what I'd like you to do as I read this, I'd like you to pay attention most significantly, most carefully, to what Jesus says and does in this passage. What Jesus says and does. Pay attention, watch him very closely. Chapter 8 of the Gospel of Luke, verse 40. Now when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. Just then there came a man named Jairus, a leader of the synagogue. He fell at Jesus' feet and begged him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter, about 12 years old, who was dying. As he went, the crowds pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years, and though she had spent all she had on physicians, no one could cure her. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his clothes, and immediately her hemorrhage stopped. Then Jesus asked, "Who touched me?" When all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowd surround you and press in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I noticed that power had gone out from me." When the woman saw that she could not remain hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him. She declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." While he was still speaking, someone came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher any longer." When Jesus heard this, he replied, "Do not fear, only believe, and she will be saved." When he came to the house, he did not allow anyone to enter with him, except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. They were all weeping and wailing for her, but he said, "Do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But he took her up by the hand and called out, "Child, get up." Her spirit returned, and she got up at once. Then he directed them to give her something to eat. Her parents were astounded, but he ordered them to tell no one what had happened. Amen. So what did you notice? What did you see that Jesus did here in these two stories together? Well, the first thing I noticed as I was meditating on this passage and thinking about it is that Jesus has the big picture in mind and that he is in control of his emotions. He's not moved off course by the crowds pressing in on him. He's not moved off course by the people who are laughing at him. He's not moved off by the declaration that this little girl has died and there's no reason for him to come. Jesus is, I don't know, could we say courageous, resolute? He's in control. He is faithful. He is constant. Because he doesn't allow the context of the situation to change him, to scare him off, to make him change what he is up to and what he is doing. And in this time, I think we need to be like Jesus. We need to act like Jesus as Christians. we need to make sure that our faith projects the calm of knowing Christ. It projects the care that Jesus shows for this woman and this dead girl. The Christian response to the coronavirus in America, at least, I can't speak to other places, but in America, at least, is to admit that we're not in control and that God is, and that we will care for our neighbors and friends. For some people I know, it was a hard decision to close person-to-person worship for 2 weeks. But it became very clear to me how important it was when I realized that we had vulnerable people in our leadership and in our membership, and that we had a responsibility to not get them sick, as well as a responsibility to ourselves and to God. And I believe that in this long Sabbath that we're taking, this social isolation time, the Christian message should be loud and clear. We care for you. This has been the message of people of faith for many, many years. This is nothing new. This goes all the way back to the Ten Commandments, when God gave to Moses and to the people the command to honor your father and your mother. We think of that as a command that we teach kids in Sunday school, to obey your parents, but it's more than that. It's for adults, that we are to honor and respect our elders. And if those are the people who are most impacted by this coronavirus and are most in danger, then we need to make sure that we, both in our speech and in our actions, say and demonstrate that we care for you. If we say anything else, it's going to blunt that message. I learned in seminary that if you say, if you have a sentence and you say, but, then whatever comes before the but gets washed away. You don't hear it. That's a really nice story, but I've got a better one. I love that picture of your dog, but here, my dog, here's a picture of mine. He's much more handsome. I'm sorry you're having trouble, but I've got my own problems to deal with. So today, we have to say to people, we care for you, full stop. We can't say, we care for you, but getting back to normal is more important. We care for you, but the economy is suffering. We care for you, but my freedom to go out and do as I please is more important. It's the same reason we don't say to a grieving widow at the funeral home, you know, someday, 2 years from now, you'll look back on this and everything will seem so much better. That may be true. You don't know. But in that moment, that's not the appropriate response. That's not the appropriate response. So my challenge to you today is to honor your father and your mother, and to be like Jesus in these stories, and to be constant, to be compassionate, to say to the woman who is hemorrhaging and the girl who is on the cusp of death, if not dead itself, we care for you. That's hard to do, but I can rely on your imagination and your creativity. I know you can figure it out. It's hard to do in this era of social distancing. How do you care for someone long distance? But I know you can figure it out. Talking to someone you haven't talked to, talking to someone who you know lives alone, who may be lonely and bored, calling someone in the retirement home who you know is under quarantine. just listening to someone talk without putting in your own agenda. And like I say, you're creative. I know you can do this. I know you can figure out a way. Let the next 24 hours be a pouring out of Christians caring for other people, caring for people in trying circumstances, caring for people who are scared, who are lost, who are lonely. I know you can do this. You are in my prayers, and we will talk to you for part 2 tomorrow. God bless you, and amen.